I'm Dane Young from UGAsports.com. That's Brent Rollins. We co-host Film Don't Lie here. If you are new to this channel, maybe you're checking out LSU for the first time, or you're an LSU fan checking out Georgia for the first time ahead of the SEC Championship, do us a favor. Subscribe to us here on YouTube. Like us on Facebook if you're watching there. We are the largest Georgia Bulldog-centric YouTube channel from UGAsports.com. That's the Rivals affiliate covering the Georgia Bulldogs. And we do a lot of SEC coverage on there. So we're excited to chat about LSU and Georgia ahead of the SEC Championship. We have the offensive preview for LSU that we did. This is now the defensive preview for the Tigers. And defense does win championships. And Brent, this defense doesn't look like a traditional LSU defense where it's just three amazing defensive backs leading the way, maybe an inside linebacker that's all world. They have emerging young players, but I'll remind people that the best player on this defense has missed the majority of the season, and that's Mason Smith, defensive lineman, who's one of the best players in the country. This would be an incredibly tough matchup if he were on the field, but he's not there. Someone else is there, though.
Yeah, and I think that's what you see is depth issues. I mean, they're really good 1 through 11 for the most part, at least in terms of players. Like guys who are going to be big-time players. Harold Perkins, we know he's going to be a big-time player. B.J. Ojulari, Wingo, who's a Missouri transfer on the interior, and then Roy. Like they're down, front four. Ali Gay, if you throw him in there as well. Like they're really good, and they're probably the best front that Georgia has played all season. Here's the problem, though. Those guys play all the time. Like especially the two interior guys, Wingo and Roy. 703 and 615 snaps between those two guys. They don't come off the field. That's, by the way, that snap count, no Georgia interior defender has ever played 500 since Kirby Smart has been hired as a coach. So wow. That's just goes to show that those guys are on the field constantly. And their defensive backs, like you said, it's not the Stingleys, Christian Fultons of the world. It's, Delpits and Honey Badger, like all that. It's not there. The three corners are transfers, so they play a lot more zone than they traditionally have. But they got pass rushers, and they got number 40.
40, and he's a guy that's emerged. He was initially a Texas A&M commit, Harold Perkins, who sounds like his name. You would think he's a 65-year-old man that's just got a decent pension and is looking forward to the remainder of his life. I don't think we're making Harolds anymore, but I'm glad we are. And LSU's glad that this guy's there because, Brent, I don't want to hype this up like too much and people think that I'm just being hyperbolic. He's one of the best players in the country. He will enter the 2023 season as one of the most electrifying football players in the nation. Everything. Because I don't know how you stop him with his speed and then where he combines with his power. And LSU is just learning how to use him. He didn't play much for the first 4 weeks of the season, and then they kind of found a groove to where he fits in.
Yeah, he only played. I don't know if I can't remember if it was injury or what, but he only played 9 snaps against Tennessee. His ability as a pass rusher and the moves he has, like for those who don't know, my next door neighbor is a pretty good pass rusher. You see him on TV some. He raves about the moves that he has and just some of the things he does that one, you might try to teach it, but two, the ability to do it and do it at a level where, like this one here, the snap and then the low bend like that, that's next level. And what amazing, he completely owned the Arkansas game. If Arkansas could have blocked him, they would have won the game.
This was literally to stop Arkansas, like this forced fumble, because this was a fumble that LSU then recovered. Mm-hmm. Like this stopped what probably would have been getting in field goal range for Arkansas.
And you think about him pressuring the quarterback. He has 36 quarterback pressures on 130 pass rush snaps. Just to give you some, UGA fans, just to give you some comparison, Mikel Williams leads Georgia with 26 pressures on 217 pass rush snaps. So the efficiency with which he is getting to the quarterback is otherworldly right now.
Here he is at a different angle here. I wanted to show this because it's going to be really, like, you're going to have to just know where 40 is because they throw him everywhere. I mean, he starts out here, looks like he's in coverage.
Yeah, 86 snaps in the slot. 86 snaps in the slot, 147 snaps where he's kind of in the box. He's like a normal inside linebacker type, and then 167 snaps where he's, the stand-up outside linebacker. So they are going to do that. They are going to move him around, and like you said, you have to be aware where number 40 is because he's a game wrecker. He just flat is a game wrecker.
Because you start thinking, who in the open field does Georgia have that can block him? Well, there's not many people that are fast enough and dynamic enough to go around to Darnell Washington. He probably could. So you're probably looking at like Bowers, maybe Kyrus Jackson out there, and you just hope they slow him.
If he's out there. That I am very intrigued to see how LSU deploys him this week against Georgia, given how Georgia plays offensively and the way they use their tight ends.
Back to Arkansas, because this is what Sam Pittman wanted.
And that Hornsby guy thinking, oh, I just outrun people. I normally just outrun dudes. Not this guy. He just hangs. And then, he's the box guy, stand up. And that's one where, if you're Stetson Bennett, you've got to know. And you've got to know he's going to chase you down. I know Stetson's broken a lot of ankles this year. He's not breaking this guy's.
And even if he does, this guy will recover because he's so fast.
Yes.
I mean, if Perkins prevents injury, he's just one of those guys you look like, all right, that's a top 5 pick in the NFL one day.
Well, and you think about what it is that you do oftentimes to players like that. You go at them. Like, you take Darnell, you take, Broderick Jones, you take your strengths and you run right at them. So like, I think that will be that's to me the most intriguing part of this matchup is how it is that they work to, because it's not like, by the way, especially if you put him on the edge, it's not like the other side's is some slouch. Mr. Ojulari, like Georgia fans know that name quite well. He's pretty good too. Here he comes from the slot. Next play comes from the slot, and just the tight end for Arkansas is like, oh, he's too fast. I can't block him. Sack.
Yeah, coming across the formation. This is just an open field mismatch with this guy. And I don't want to like overhype people, but this guy deserves all the hype.
I say he's really good. He's really daggone good.
He's their best defensive player, and I don't know that he always knows what he's doing yet. He's that kind of guy.
Yep.
Now, because you have Ojulari, because you have Perkins, when I watch this tape of LSU, I found that they do something that Georgia hasn't seen a whole ton of this year. They're hyper aggressive, and they want to attack the pocket quickly. And Georgia's going to have to be cognizant of that. Otherwise, that's how they create turnovers.
Well, the interesting part is blitz percentage. I think they're right around sort of the upper tier in terms of the SEC with blitz percentage, but they often play this year because of the way their corners are and how they play. They often play zone behind it. Like you can see at the top of the screen, and even the bottom of the screen, you can see those guys opening their hips with their eyes back in the backfield. They're playing zone. It's not like they're straight up man everywhere across the board and only one safety, and we're just bump and run in your face kind of man coverage. They've played a lot of zone. They play a lot of cover 3, a lot of quarters. So it'll be interesting. You as an offense, you think about that. We're talking about Perkins as a pass rusher, Ojulari as a pass rusher. Georgia's offensive line, number 1 in the nation in terms of PFF's pass block efficiency measure. I think they've yet to, as an offensive line, just the 5 offensive linemen, yet to allow a sack. So, again, this is one of those, all right, strength on strength, who wins kind of thing.
The check down running back does not matter when you have 5. They get to the quarterback before he can get to the check down. And that's a gamble that I saw LSU make a decent amount on its tape was we're going to bring the extra guy in there. He's
especially against Bryce.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's Bryce. Get him down because we'll see when you leave him on his feet. We'll see. Is this it? Yep. This is it.
Perkins in there almost gets him, and then Bryce just does Bryce type things.
But just look at the amount of bodies in here. That's the holding against Perkins, frankly. That should have been called. But maybe even a face mask.
Well, and even, the two interior guys, Roy and Wingo, like they actually, from a pressure standpoint, not necessarily on a per snap basis because they play so much, but they aren't slouches. They aren't just space eaters from a pass rush perspective. They get after the QB as well. A little zoom action.
That's a hold. I would say so. But what do I know? I just play with video and
draw circles, right?
So you're right that Stetson Bennett's not going to be able to get away from some of these guys. But Stetson Bennett's also pretty good with this backyard football stuff. Like, he does make 100%. Some stuff happen.
I agree.
We've seen LSU, if the plays get extended, and this happens for every team, so I'm not like targeting LSU for this. When plays get extended, LSU gets punished. And they're coming off what I don't know what the numbers say, but it looks like that Texas A&M game was among the worst tackling games that they've had. So I can't imagine their tackling confidence is very high. I can't imagine, though, that the coaches are going to be yelling at them for missing tackles.
And you can also imagine that the energy of this week completely different than the energy of a week ago.
Yeah.
And especially when it's kids being kids. They just watched A&M score 20 points against UMass. And and then A&M said, all right, well, we're going to just give it to A-Chain like 800 times. And
isn't it one of the beauty? It's one of the beauties of college football, though, that like the two teams that scored the most points on Georgia this season, it was a tie between Missouri and Kent State.
Yeah.
Which I think Kent State's a really well-coached team. I'm surprised he's not been hired by someone yet. Let's get to what A&M did to LSU, because the result of this game, I think, was among the most confounding of the final week of the season. Was how did A&M really? I mean, I think you used the word earlier, boat race. Did they bully LSU?
When that was the most points they scored in any game all season. The previous high was 31 against Sam Houston State. And for Georgia fans, you're probably hoping that your number 6 gets the lanes that their number 6 had. Mm-hmm. And what's interesting about this, you think about, okay, when I have these great edge guys or really good edge guys, what's the best way to beat them? Oftentimes the best way to beat them is to not block them. And that's what this is. This is counter bash. So this is counter to the left. You see the guard and the tackle pulling left, and then bash back away. So the back comes back to the right. And, those guys flow with the line, and then you're going away. One of the things with Georgia that we've seen over the course of the season is they'll take something that they like from somebody else and put it in the next week. Like they play Tennessee, and then the next week at Miss State, they're using the wide splits 2x2 formation. I could see this being in their playbook, given how much Georgia has depended upon counter or run, not necessarily dependent upon, but how much Georgia has run counter recently.
There's also some potential version of this. Georgia's been using the jet sweep so much with its skill guys. You wonder if there's a way that counter kind of goes this way to get the flow that you're talking about, but maybe it's McConkey or maybe it's Bowers or someone that maybe McIntosh continues to go that way, but the sweep comes out here with your receivers. I don't know. I like drawing on the screen.
Yeah, there we go. I mean, anything is possible. I will say anything is possible with Monken's offense because it changes week to week. And he's going to look at this opponent. He's going to have a new game plan for this opponent and new sort of focus and based upon what it is that LSU does.
I can't iterate enough that these defensive backs for LSU, they're just not the caliber of what you expect to see in that uniform.
They've played okay. I mean, at least from a completion percentage standpoint, the corners have actually done solid. The outside guys, Garner, and then the hyphenated name guy, the other transfer from Oklahoma State, I think. But this is just a great play and a great job by A&M's quarterback, putting the ball where it needed to be, backing up. This is, sort of tight end leak. And something, again, these are things that because A&M using them, they work, you might 100% see Georgia do the exact same thing this week because it's what their offense does. It changes week to week, and they got guys that can do these kind of things.
how willing are you to stay in the pocket and let the play develop? Because if you tell me what I'm looking at on the screen here, I'm thinking this is a sack all day long, down in the red zone, screwing up everything. But this is just some composure at quarterback. We've seen Stetson have a ton of composure. We've also seen Stetson in these situations sometimes try to do a bit too much.
Yes.
Maybe the play, I don't remember the down here, but maybe it's toss it out of the back of the end zone, live for another down. It worked here, though.
And you think about Georgia's team and how they play football and just their season. How do teams stay in a game with Georgia? Georgia gives them the ball. That's how, outside of Kentucky sort of in that game just being slow and then the weather, and then outside of, Tech just being sleepy noon type stuff, like in flat for a while. When people stay in a game with Georgia, Georgia gives them the ball, and Stetson Bennett's going to be pressured.
This was third down, so never mind about the back of the end zone.
Yep.
The theory holds true, though. And just because of where the ball is, it's not like you're making the field goal that much harder if it's here compared to here. So a sack doesn't kill you as long as you hold on to the ball.
But does Stetson put it on the turf? Like that's one of the keys, to, at least for LSU's probably sitting there thinking like, look, we got our guys, we got to pressure him, and we pressure him enough, and maybe he puts the ball on the turf.
Let's also remember that this game happened at Texas A&M, and they were hyped for it.
Oh my, that was the most hyped 4-7 team crowd ever.
LSU in its win against Alabama, that was in Baton Rouge, really rocking Baton Rouge. Now Tennessee went to Baton Rouge and beat the crap out of them at an 11 a.m. kickoff. This is going to be a road atmosphere for LSU. This is going to be Georgia fans in Atlanta. There'll be some LSU people there. I'm not saying there won't be, but especially after this loss, I got to think that's going to be like 70-80%.
I'd say it's probably at least at men, you're talking 2/3 home.
Speaking of Tennessee,
and we talked about, do they, they blitz, they often play zone behind. Well, because when they play man behind the blitz, this is just horrible alignment. This throw is an easy decision and throw, but also, you're just getting beat. Not getting back in time, and gives a wide open inside lane, easy touchdown for Tennessee. That's Stetson against when he was blitzed against Georgia Tech was only 4 of 11. And Tech actually got to him a couple of times, had some free rushers. So no doubt think that LSU is going to look at that and try to figure out ways that they can get their athletes free, not be blocked.
Anecdotally, I tend to think that when a team is stacking the box like this against Georgia on a passing down or what tends to be a passing play, they tend to get Stetson moving one way or the other on a run rather than just stay in the pocket and stand up and make a throw. In my head, that's what I think of the most when those plays have happened. I could be wrong in that, but for so many times you've seen the batted passes when he has a ton of arms and traffic in front of him. I wonder if the box gets stacked like this, what they try to do to. He's more comfortable throwing on the run anyway.
Yeah, and I think you're going to see what's going to be interesting is, does LSU play a little more man in this game because they think they can cover Georgia's receivers? And
probably a pretty good bet.
That I think, whereas we're talking about, hey, they normally blitz and play zone, they've played a lot of zone behind. Does that change a little bit as if they look and say, look, all right, we think we can cover these guys? And the thing about their corners, they're big physical corners, like 6'1", 6'2", 200-pound guys. It's not a lot of just slot little jitterbugs that are Bullard size. It's big physical guys.
Here's A-Chain again. Just
when in doubt,
people miss tackles.
If you're Georgia and you can hand the ball to number 6 for your side 38 times and get 215 yards like they did with Mr. A-Chain.
If that stat line exists, I guarantee Georgia wins.
I would be my jaw would hit the floor if a singular Georgia running back had 38 carries. I don't know that will ever happen again. But
it wasn't Georgia, but I did cover an SEC championship. Trey Mason in Auburn's 2013 season against Missouri. I want to say he had like 48 carries against Missouri that day. Malzahn destroyed him, but they won.
And I think that's what Jimbo said to Mr. A-Chain here. He's like, look, dude, I know this is the last game for us. You're getting the rock as much as you possibly can. But you think about as he got better as the game went on, and that depth issue that I mentioned, where those interior guys play all the time, I think you're going to see Georgia do some of, they're going to run their stuff and they're going to go tempo. I think you're going to see more tempo in this game than you've seen from Georgia in a long time because of especially those interior guys and wearing those interior guys down because they don't come off the field.
I don't see a lot of Georgia running backs tend to like going toward the sideline on most plays. That tends to be more the jet sweeps with McConkey or Bowers or the wide plays. Georgia tends to be a bit more between the hashes, between the tackles, trying to do something off tackle or between tackles. I'll be curious to see if they look at some of the LSU tape and say, we can probably break some out wide too.
They might just look at it and say, look, we can do what we do and be just fine.
Yeah, that's probably more likely.
There's a reason that you're a 2 touchdown plus favorite. Like that reason does exist. And LSU has obviously struggled in certain instances. But if you're thinking about, all right, what's the recipe for LSU to, 1, make this a 4-quarter game, and or 2, pull the big upset? It's the freakiness of your quarterback, Jaden Daniels, being just either making great throws down the field and you winning one-on-one matchups, or him doing crazy things with his legs, or 2, your freak shows, Ojulari, Perkins, those guys getting the quarterback, strip sacks, turnovers, things like that. You do those 2 things, I think you hang around and make this a 4-quarter game. You don't, and especially if you allow Georgia to run the ball and be in this play action game, it could get not so good.
Last thing that I wanted to mention from LSU's defense is, yes, that pressure that they get, and they stack the box a lot. They don't always come. Sometimes they'll back away. And as you said, sometimes it's zone behind that too. LSU's linebackers in coverage is a liability. And Georgia has tight ends that should be able to thrash that weakness. So where you haven't seen a whole lot of Bowers in recent weeks, where you haven't seen a whole lot of Darnell Washington catching the ball, I think that's going to be the avenue for Georgia to do whatever it wants to do, is to lean on Bowers down the seam. And I think it'll be there quite often. I really don't know who LSU matches up on it. And I think the only hope LSU has to stop that is to get to Stetson Bennett before he can throw it to them.
Yep.
They have one guy, well, they have 2 guys that can do that. But man, Harold Perkins, like Georgia could potentially be seeing LSU again next year, because it's just the combination of you get Perkins and you get Mason Smith back. Woo! A little transfer portal help on the back end. LSU may be dangerous next year too.
And I don't think Bama's going to be that great.
Oh, he said it. He said it. I heard it. You did too. What you need to hear from me, and if you're watching this, it's that you can win some free Jittery Joe's coffee. It's a limited edition national championship can. Check out the link in the description. We'll have a comment up here as well. There's a King Sumo link. That's the company that we use, the service that we use for our raffles, contest, those sorts of things. You can win free Jittery Joe's coffee. It's Athens' favorite coffee. Go to jitteryjoes.com if you'd like to purchase some yourself. Maybe there's some other varieties you like. This is a kind of halfway between light and medium roast if you want something a little bit darker. Sometimes I like to have a dark roast coffee in the morning, and I don't add cream or anything to it because I'm just like that. I was about to say because it's hardcore. It's really not. It's just that's my flavor palette. But anything I can make myself sound hardcore, I'll do it. You'll be a hardcore Georgia fan if you get this in your collection, and it's just something you want to have to celebrate Georgia's 2021 national championship. It's a great coffee can. I like to decorate my office with the Jittery Joe's coffee cans that I've used. I just think it adds some cool culture, and I just love what they represent for Northeast Georgia. So go check out jitteryjoes.com and get your limited edition Jittery Joe's Coffee. Brent, we've done our previews for Georgia and LSU. We'll be doing previews for wherever Georgia ends up after this. We think it'll probably be right back in Atlanta. It just depends. Is that TCU? Is that USC? Is that Michigan? We'll all find that out together, and you can find out with us by subscribing to this YouTube channel or Facebook page. So please do that. Hit that subscribe button. We appreciate you. For